Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I'm back with Ben Pickard, and we are talking about how so many of you as gym owners are just uncomfortable talking about making money as a gym owner. So this is now the second episode we're going to do about building personal wealth as a gym owner. We're going to help you understand the processes you have to have in place as a gym owner to make sure that you are squeezing the appropriate amount of money and value out of your business to make sure that you are growing wealthier as you grow wiser as a gym owner. So if you struggle to really make money as a gym owner and make sure that money is running into your personal pocket, this is a great episode for you. If you haven't listened to our first one yet, go back and listen to episode 304, how to build personal wealth as a gym owner. Then come back to this one and we continue with some really great tips. We want you to be rich, my friends. We want you to do good and make money. So if you want that too, keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm stoked to be back with Ben again. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Hello. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm so excited to jump in to talk about creating personal wealth for gym owners, kind of part two, because we kind of started this conversation in a previous episode. And I want to continue today to help make all of our listeners richer. That's my plan today. Everyone listening to this podcast, we're going to make you more rich. But before we do, I just want to give a quick shout out to the fact that we're doing some great content over on the Instagram these days. That if y'all have not followed us on the gram, do I age myself by calling it the gram? I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what the kids are saying. We're on the TikTok too, I think, but we're really crushing on the gram. So I really want to encourage you to go over to the gram. I'm going to keep saying it now and go follow us because there is some great tips on there. There's great stuff putting up by Pete. We have clips from this podcast. We have other fantastic content on there that I'm really proud of. I think we're just doing a really great job putting out really useful stuff on a regular basis. So go follow us on the gram, link down below in the show notes. Let's dive in and make you all more rich. So Ben, let's just cover this topic. Big picture. Obviously, everyone wants to be rich. Everyone wants to build personal wealth so they can, be comfortable in life or maybe even extravagant. But can you just talk a little bit about like what's been your relationship as a gym owner to using your gym as a way to build personal wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the funny question where it's the thing that everybody wants to do, but it's also like the thing that most people feel a little bit icky about asking people
Yeah.
for money and that type of thing. So kind of like the hot take overview on this is you need to generate revenue in your business. You need to then allocate that revenue and give every dollar a job, so to speak, which we'll talk more about. You need to pay your fucking self. You should make some
Yes.
money from this. Don't be making less than minimum wage. And then last but not least is you need to keep as much money as possible being via ethical tax strategy is probably the best way to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love that you started there because I think so often this is like a taboo topic for gym owners. Like part of the reason they started the business was, yes, to make an impact, help clients live happier, healthier, stronger, longer lives. Like all of that really matters. And you should be paid well for your time. If you're having that positive impact on the world and your community and your clients and your team, you should be paid well for the service, for the impact you're putting out there in the world. And I think talking about paying yourself, I just hope isn't taboo for all of you, dear listeners. I hope that you will dive in and actively talk about, when appropriate, right? Yeah, you wanting to make money as a gym owner. I think that's a really good thing. We encourage our Unicorn Side members to do it all the time. And to Ben's point, there's some really simple steps we're going to go through that'll help you maximize the amount you can leverage from your gym. Before we do that, I just want to give a quick shout out. We did a previous episode of this podcast where we went through what we think is step one, which is really kind of taking your financial temperature. So go back and take a look at that. That was, I'll tell you right now. It was episode 304 of the podcast. It was called How to Build Personal Wealth as a Gym Owner. Go listen to that first, because I do think we go through 4 really important questions to figure out where you are now, where you want to go, and how to define that gap. Once you're clear on that gap, you can move into some of the strategies we're going to talk about today, as Ben already outlined them. But let's dive into the first one, Ben. You said the first step here in terms of managing your gym in a way that makes sure that you can pay yourself well is to create revenue. So just talk through this first one, which seems pretty obvious, but it has to happen.
Yeah, part of me wants to say no more, go make some money, but let's talk a little bit more about what that actually looks like. Because if everyone knew the answer to that, The world would be a much different place.
And we wouldn't
Um,
have jobs.
yeah, that's true. We'd never have an employee because everyone's just out busy making money.
Yeah.
So yeah, like really, as we all know, driving revenue in your business is mostly a function of the marketing and sales department, as I air quote this for the audio only listeners here. Um, and it's having multiple different irons in the fire or poles in the water, depending on what type of marketing analogies you like to use, that are not just done incredibly consistently. I'm going to say that again, incredibly
Hmm.
consistently. Posting on social media once or sending one email a month, not going to move the needle, but you're doing it incredibly consistently. And you're also leveling up your skill set as this. Now, I know there's probably someone out there who's the 1% who's like, I came from a marketing and sales background and then I opened a gym. Maybe you don't need to level up your skill set, but for the rest of us who almost always came from a fitness background first and then had to be self-taught, business, marketing, sales, money, um, just acknowledge that that's probably the weakest tool in your toolbox. And you probably
Hmm.
should learn a little bit less time spent about squatting and training and a little bit more time about what what are the poles I should have in the water? What's the right frequency for those poles? And most importantly, how do I level up my fishing game?
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy, and I think what you're outlining here, Ben, is like y'all need systems. Y'all need systems to consistently be marketing and selling. And so often you're just kind of winging it, trying a little of this, trying a little of that. And you're like, oh, I tried a little of that. It didn't work. Well, you didn't do enough of it consistently enough for it to have an impact. So of course it
Yeah,
didn't work. Right. But if you really want to drive personal wealth as a result of being a gym owner, it starts with being consistently able to generate revenue, and that requires systems. And again, the word that Ben keeps using, I want to iterate here, is consistent. Right? It's
consistent
almost less
systems.
important which strategy you pick than you do it really well. Right? If you do almost anything consistently enough, again and again and again, almost anything can move the needle if it's like a decent strategy and you do it well enough. So I think we can't overstate how much just the consistent effort in marketing makes a big difference.
Yeah. And step two with that is when you do all those good marketing things, you really need to have consistent sales systems. Big
Hmm.
surprise, which is, if we're going to draw the line in the sand here, everything from a robust lead follow-up process, whether it's through like DMs, email, phone call, etc., text
Hmm.
messages, to then having a really robust um, like strategy session or consultation process as well. It can't just be someone raises their hand and be like, hey, I want to know more about your gym. And you're like, cool,
Yep.
here's our pricing. Let me know if you want to join. And I
Yeah.
say that kind of tongue in cheek, knowing that there's people out there who are doing that. It's
Yeah.
like, and it's not just follow up to make people buy. Because what the reason finance is, quick aside here, really important to me is if you get this stuff in order, it allows you to do a better job for your community. So as much as we were
Mm.
joking at the beginning about make you rich, we want to do that, but let's get you rich by making a difference in the world. And
Yeah.
all the systems that are going to help make drive revenue in their business to make you money are also going to give a way better experience for everyone you work with, team
Hmm.
members, everybody.
Yeah. It's not just money for money's sake, right? Like when you create a positive impact for your employees and for your clients and for your community, the money will come. The money will come because you are adding value to their lives. And the way to add value to the most people's lives is have a really great system to get in front of strangers on a regular basis, which is great marketing, and then great sales to help them get out of their own way and accept the help you're willing to offer. So that's really step one, is to create revenue in the business. Without the revenue, there's really no money to do anything with. And the rest of this conversation doesn't matter. So let's just assume they got that, Ben. They got some revenue to work with. Then what?
Well, the next step is allocate it. And we're obviously huge fans of the profit first approach. Mike
Uh-huh.
Michalowicz, there's two books, Profit First and Profit First for Micro Gyms. But the way I think of this is you want to give your dollars a job. It's not just a collective vat of dollars that you pull from until it hopefully doesn't dry up. Um, it's how do you make sure that the dollars you're making are going to the right places to support your team, to support
Mhm.
reinvesting in the business, to support your client life cycle and your client experience through memorable and powerful gifts that show your appreciation for their time with you. So you
Mhm.
need to make sure those dollars are given a place to go. So the easiest way to think about this is you have an expense bucket, and that expense bucket is broken down into people and non-people. So typically your people expenses, meaning all humans who have a function in the business excluding owners or owner, You can spend anywhere from like 25 up to 40% of revenue on people. So for every dollar you come in, up to 40 cents goes to your team. The second half of that is your non-people expenses, and your non-people expenses are typically in the 20 to 35% range. Now, the caveat here is although 40 plus 35 is 75%, your total expenses really shouldn't exceed 70% of your revenue. So every dollar you make, you're spending about 70 cents on like people and non-people. And we're going to talk about the other categories later. So I'm trying to stop myself from jumping ahead here.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, there are some caveats here as well that like maybe you've got the best training team in the country and your people expenses are like 44%. That's okay. Not the end of the world. Just make sure that your non-people expenses are proportionately less.
Yeah.
And sometimes sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, I just want to underscore that because some of y'all, you can't have crazy expensive rent and pay your people the most money they could make in your market. You just can't do both. There has to be some give and take to keep, as Ben said, the total amount you're spending on people and non-people to be less than 70%. It's got to be less than 7 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar for every dollar that comes in. And so there's got to be give and take. And if your rent's already really high and you know that, then you're not going to be able to go over 40% with what you pay your people.
Yeah.
Or if your rent's
you
crazy,
have to make a shitload of revenue.
Yeah, but even still, it's just like you're going to have to make so much revenue to pull money out of the business at that point. You're setting yourself to like play a game that's too hard to win. Just don't. Right? But you also on the flip side, right? If you got a crazy good rent deal, and your rent is super low percentage and your utilities are low and all that, then maybe you can afford to pay your people a little bit more. Right? Like that's okay. Right. But I just wanted to say that like you can't have it all. You can't spend the most on everything and still expect to squeeze profit out of your business.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. I appreciate you mentioning that, Michael. Because the other point I was thinking in addition to that is sometimes when you're looking at your expenses, and let's say your people expenses are a little bit high,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting we all should go fire a team member by any stretch, but sometimes it's a wake up call to be like, oh, am I spending my time in the right places? Because if you need to spend over 40% of expenses on people, plus you're either not doing a whole lot of work in the business or you're working an absolute ton, it might be time to do a time audit to see, are you pulling the most important levers that you could be pulling?
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. Well, let's keep going. So we got step one, which is create some revenue, create some actually money in the business. Step two is allocate that money, put it in specific piggy banks so you know what to spend. And you gave the analogy here of all the expenses should be like up to 40% on people and up to kind of 35% on non-people, 70% total ideal for total expenses. But then what? What about you as a gym owner?
Well, conveniently, there's 30% missing from your total here. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
So the third step is you need to pay yourself.
Yeah.
And this is where it can get a little bit complicated. So I'm going to do my best to keep it as simple as possible because we already, even on this podcast, we have American and Canadian with different tax systems, different pay structures. And I know that's only 2 countries on the planet.
It gets complicated in different countries. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can think of your pay in basically 3 different buckets. Of that 30%, some of that money is going to be your regular recurring salary. Now, whether you're on salary or dividends or distributions or whatever it's called, it's your regular pay for doing the main functions that you do in the business. And that'll vary, but usually that's about 10% or a little bit higher of revenue. In addition to that, you're also going to have some profit. And we want to see profit be at least 10, if not 20% plus. And some of that profit is going to go to you on an incremental basis, such as paying yourself out a profit share quarterly according to Profit First. Some of that profit is going to go towards reinvesting in the business, whether it's driving more leads or improving systems, hiring team members. And then some of that profit can also be used to pay taxes because obviously, unless you live in a tax-free country like the Cayman Islands, the government needs to get paid.
Yeah.
Then the third way, in addition to your regular salary, your share of the profit, piece number 3 for your pay is owner perks. So those are the things that you can do by any ethical things that you can run through the business that the business can use before tax dollars. And we'll talk more about that in step 4. But That kind of gives you the breakdown of step 3. You're not just pulling every dollar out of the business. You're also not pulling no dollars out of the business when it comes to
Yeah.
paying yourself. You're finding a way with your accountant to have a regular recurring salary to cover your cost of living that ideally is at a fair market value for the work you do.
Mm.
You should be getting some profit from the business, which I think of as the business rewarding you for taking on the risks of entrepreneurship. And the business is going to pay for some stuff for you because you took on some risks, and there's some things that, maybe you don't need to carry 2 different cell phones, just have the business carry the one.
Yeah, I think it's a really great summary, Ben. So, right, to recap here, step 3 is just all about paying yourself. That extra 30% that's left over after expenses, it goes to, in the US, Uncle Sam and you. And the 3 categories Ben gave here is like some basically salary, or your amount that you pay yourself to do your job, profit or profit distributions, and then perks, money that you pass through the business, and you pay for things with pre-tax dollars that are for you. In some cases, it's cell phones, it's internet access, it's portion of your rent for an at-home office, those kinds of things that you can legally and ethically um, uh, pass through. So that's step 3. There's one more step. Let's just jump right to it. What's the 4th thing they have to do, Ben?
Yeah, the 4th step is keeping as much of the money that's left over as you can. And for the sake of this podcast, we're going to keep this from the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
In personal wealth podcast number 3, we'll talk about the personal side of things. This is just the business side.
Sure.
But now you need to figure out how to keep money. So one of the important things, as we talked about using owner perks, is using before tax dollars to pay for things. So I'll use an example here so you can follow along. Let's say the business tax rate is 25%. So that means for every dollar of profit you retain in the business at the end of the year that didn't get taken out as expenses or owner's pay, you had to give 25 cents to your country's version of Uncle Sam. So that means if you need to spend $100 on your cell phone bill, you actually needed to make more than $100 because there was some tax that came off. You probably need to make closer to like 125. But if you use before tax dollars, that $100 cell phone bill is only 100. So another way to think of this is by putting things through the business, whatever your tax rate is, that is the percentage on sale that thing is. And I don't know about you, but if I saw something on sale for 25% off that I probably needed to get, I'd be definitely buying it. It is a massive savings. Now, I do want to say the obvious thing here, which is don't run everything through your business. I don't know any countries where you can like pay your personal mortgage with your business. There's some things that are like an absolute no-go, which is why talk to your accountant. But there's a lot of things like in Canada, whatever percentage your home office is of your square footage of your house, let's say it's 10%, you can write off 10% of your interest, 10% of your utilities, 10% of like every house expense. You already have a house. You already need some of these stuff. If you need a new computer for work, using pre-tax dollars can save you literally hundreds of dollars on this. So use business dollars because they're before tax to save money on the things that you needed anyways that, of course, are legal within your tax jurisdiction or country.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And listeners, I know I probably said this at the opening of this episode, and I'll say it again. Like, listen, this is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. We're just telling you what we see really works for most gym owners, which is, again, to recap the 4 steps is you got to have revenue or else nothing else matters. You need to be cautious about what you spend and put money in specific buckets or piggy banks, like the profit first model, to make sure you're spending wisely. You got to pay yourself in all those ways we talked about paying yourself. Then you got to make sure that you're keeping as much money in the business as possible by using those pre-tax dollars and not overpaying an overdue amount. No, what's the word? And too much. Not paying too much to your government. We want to pay some, right? I like paying taxes. I believe in paying taxes. I like that my taxes go to doing all kinds of things like bridges and roads and helping people who need it. And I don't want to pay too much. I don't want to pay too much. I want to use the laws to my advantage to pay an amount that is fair. And there's lots of debate we can all have about that on probably some other podcasts. But on this podcast, we trust you're going to do what's like legal and ethical for you and use a local professional to help you understand where those lines are for yourself. I know there's probably more to say, and we'll probably do another podcast that goes more into, okay, once you have that money personally, what do you do with the money once it's in your own personal accounts is probably a good place for us to go next. But given everything we've covered so far, anything else you want to say about driving personal wealth as a gym owner?
Yeah, I do. There's, and this gets a little bit more philosophical, so I'll keep this
Yeah.
brief.
Let it out.
Like it makes me feel immense happiness that we are in an industry where the
Hmm.
thing we sell actually has the potential to change someone's lives. We're not
Yep.
selling, at the far end of the bad spectrum. We're not fucking scamming people out of shit.
Yep.
Um, but we're also not just like selling useless junk that people don't need more of.
Hmm.
And I'm not judging any other industries out there because they clearly have a customer base, but we're selling a thing that more and more people on the planet are needing more and more, to put it articulately. So it makes me incredibly happy that we're in this industry changing lives and being paid to do so.
Yeah.
And if you want your gym to be able to continue to change lives and live your mission and create real careers for your team, I think we have an obligation as gym owners to get our financial shit together so that we can continue to be here, not just tomorrow, but like
Hmm.
our gyms are better next year and the year after that. And the things that we're doing and our offerings are serving more people at a greater level. I'm aware there's a probably geographic cap for most of us that one gym probably isn't going to take over the world and become the next Apple or Tesla or Google, but we have the potential to make a really big impact. And if money's been icky for you or it feels grimy or even just you have whatever that is feelings
Hmm.
about it, I want to really encourage you to lean in because the success of your business kind of depends on it. But more importantly, the success of your community depends on it. And don't let this be the thing that holds you back, that you go to business because you manage your finances poorly and we're just afraid of it. Because you can change some lives. We want to support you in changing those lives. So please do it.
Yeah. Beautifully said, my friend. We'll end the podcast there. Nothing more to add. Thanks so much for listening, my friends. We hope you found this podcast valuable. If you have, please leave us a 5-star review everywhere you listen. And then, like I said, go follow us on the Instagram and share it with all of your fitness friends so they can follow us and find this podcast as well. Thanks for a great conversation, Ben. See you on the next one.
Thank you. Talk soon.